I never imagined becoming the CEO of a multi-million-dollar tech company after losing everything. 5 years ago, my world collapsed when I discovered my wife Allison having an affair with Jackson, my best friend since college. The betrayal cut deep, but instead of seeking revenge, I made a different choice. I let them have their seemingly perfect life together while I quietly built my empire from scratch. I gave them exactly what they wanted, which ironically became the foundation of my greatest success. Before I tell you how they came crawling back, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you want more stories about turning betrayal into success. I met Allison during my junior year at Washington State University. She was studying marketing while I was pursuing computer science. Our connection was immediate. Her infectious laugh and ambitious spirit complemented my more reserved nature. After graduation, we moved to Seattle together, spending 5 wonderful years building our relationship before finally tying the knot in a small ceremony overlooking Puget Sound. We settled into what seemed like a picture-perfect life, in a craftsman-style house, in a quiet Seattle suburb. I landed a position at a promising tech startup, developing enterprise software solutions. The hours were long, but the work challenged me, and I thrived on solving complex programming problems. Allison quickly climbed the corporate ladder at a marketing agency, eventually becoming one of their youngest executives. Our social circle consisted mainly of college friends, who had also moved to Seattle. Jackson was the most constant presence. He and I had been roommates throughout college, and he stood as my best man at our wedding. With his background in business development, he eventually joined the same tech company where I worked, though in a different department. Our lives seemed perfectly intertwined. Weekend barbecues, holiday gatherings, camping trips to Olympic National Park, every summer. We were living the millennial dream. The first signs of trouble emerged about 3 years into our marriage. The startup was preparing for a major product launch, and I found myself working 60 to 70-hour weeks. I was developing a new software architecture that could potentially revolutionize how our clients manage their data. Allison initially supported my dedication, understanding the importance of this project for my career. As weeks of late nights turned into months, I noticed subtle changes in her behavior. She became increasingly distant, often canceling our dinner plans and spending more time with friends. Her phone would constantly buzz with messages, and she began taking calls in another room. When I asked about these changes, she dismissed my concerns, attributing her behavior to stress from her own work deadlines. What I found strange was how frequently Jackson started appearing at our house during this period. He would drop by unannounced when I was working late, claiming he was just checking on Allison since I was so busy. At the time, I appreciated his concern. In hindsight, I should have recognized the warning signs, the lingering glances between them during group gatherings, the inside jokes I somehow was not part of anymore, the way their conversations would abruptly change topics when I entered a room. I dismissed these observations as paranoia, born from exhaustion and stress. After all, this was my wife and my best friend, the 2 people I trusted most in the world. The thought that they would betray me seemed inconceivable. I buried these suspicions and focused even more intensely on my work, creating an even greater distance between Allison and myself. It was a vicious cycle I did not recognize until it was too late. The truth revealed itself, in the cruelest way possible. I had been on a 3-day business trip to San Francisco, presenting our new software to potential investors. The presentation went exceptionally well, with several venture capitalists expressing serious interest. I decided to catch an earlier flight home to surprise Allison with the good news, imagining a celebratory dinner, and reconnecting after weeks of minimal quality time together. When I unlocked our front door at 2 in the afternoon, the house was unusually quiet. I noticed 2 wine glasses on the coffee table and clothing scattered on the stairs. At first, my mind created innocent explanations. Perhaps Allison had come home early too. Maybe she had a friend over for lunch. But as I climbed the stairs and approached our bedroom, I heard sounds that instantly turned my blood cold. I stood frozen outside our bedroom door, my hand unable to turn the knob. Part of me wanted to walk away to pretend I had never come home early to preserve the life I thought we had. But I knew I could not live in denial. I pushed the door open and found Allison and Jackson in our bed, our marital bed. They scrambled to cover themselves, their faces transitioning from pleasure to shock to shame in seconds. No one spoke for what felt like an eternity. The room spun around me as my brain struggled to process the scene before me. Finally, I managed to ask the only question that mattered: how long? Allison claimed it was just a mistake, a momentary lapse in judgment. Jackson could barely look me in the eye, But when I grabbed Allison's phone and demanded she unlock it, the truth became undeniable. Messages, dating back nearly 8 months, revealed an affair that had begun shortly after my increased work hours. They had been meeting not just at our home but at hotels, at his apartment, even sneaking away during our group outings. The confrontation that followed was both explosive and strangely subdued. I remember shouting until my voice gave out while they offered pathetic excuses. Allison blamed my absence and emotional unavailability. Jackson suggested that it had just happened, as though they had been powerless to resist. Neither seemed genuinely remorseful about the betrayal, only that they had been caught. I packed a suitcase and checked into a downtown hotel that same afternoon. The next 7 days passed in a blur of sleepless nights and emotionless days. I called in sick to work and barely ate. Friends reached out after hearing rumors, but I could not bear to discuss what had happened. My entire social circle was connected to both Allison and Jackson, and I had no idea who I could trust anymore. 1 week after discovering the affair, I woke up in my hotel room with unexpected clarity. The previous night I had hit rock bottom, contemplating destructive forms of revenge. I had imagined exposing them publicly, fighting for every penny in the divorce, and doing everything possible to make their lives miserable. But in the clear light of morning, I recognized that path would only prolong my pain and entangle me further in their betrayal. A new approach crystallized in my mind. What if instead of fighting them, I simply let go? What if I channeled all the energy I would spend on revenge into creating something for myself? The idea was both terrifying and liberating. I decided in that moment that I would give them exactly what they wanted: a clean break and freedom to be together without the burden of guilt. Meanwhile, I would focus entirely on rebuilding my life on my terms. This was not surrender but strategy. By appearing defeated on the outside, I could move forward without their interference or any obligation to include them in my future success. I would use the pain as fuel, rather than let it consume me. This realization marked the turning point where I reclaimed control of my narrative. The divorce proceedings began 2 weeks later. I surprised both Allison and our lawyers by being unusually accommodating. I let her keep the house we had bought together, despite having contributed the larger portion of the down payment. I did not contest her claims about our joint assets, and agreed to a settlement that on paper appeared to favor her significantly. What Allison and Jackson did not know was that I had been developing a proprietary algorithm during those late nights at work. An algorithm my company had shown little interest in, but that I believed had enormous potential. Through careful legal maneuvering and the help of a brilliant attorney who specialized in intellectual property, I ensured this work remained mine alone. While they thought I was giving away material possessions out of defeat or guilt, I was protecting the one asset that would eventually become the foundation of my future company. Throughout the proceedings, I maintained minimal contact with both of them. When we did interact, I projected an image of a man struggling to cope. I let Jackson believe he had won, watching him poorly disguise his satisfaction during accidental encounters. Their apparent victory gave them confidence while providing me with powerful motivation every time I felt my resolve weakening. After finalizing the divorce, I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment in a different neighborhood. The space was modest, but functional, with the second half of the living room converted into an impromptu workspace. Here, away from the reminders of my previous life, I began developing my business concept in earnest. The algorithm I had created could analyze consumer behavior data with unprecedented accuracy, allowing companies to predict market trends and customer needs before competitors. I refined the code, night after night, fueled by a determination I had never experienced before. My previous company had dismissed the potential, considering it too experimental for their established client base. Their short-sightedness would prove to be their loss in my opportunity. Finding initial funding was the first major hurdle. I created a comprehensive business plan and began reaching out to investors, facing rejection after rejection. Many were hesitant to back a solo founder, with no established track record outside of a traditional company structure. On my 27th pitch, I finally connected with Andrea Kim, an angel investor known for taking chances on unconventional ideas and founders. Andrea saw potential not just in my technology but in my hunger to succeed. After an intense 5-hour meeting where I explained every aspect of my concept, she offered $500,000 in seed funding in exchange for 20% equity. The investment allowed me to rent a small office space, purchase necessary equipment, and make my first 3 hires top talent I had worked with previously who believed in my vision. While building the foundation of my company, I also focused intensely on personal transformation. The physical and mental toll of the betrayal had left me depleted. I joined a gym and committed to a 5-day-per-week fitness regimen, not just to improve my appearance, but to build discipline and channel negative emotions productively. Each morning began with a 4-mile run regardless of whether or how little I had slept. I also started seeing a therapist who specialized in trauma and betrayal. These weekly sessions helped me process my anger and grief without letting these emotions dictate my actions. She introduced me to meditation and journaling practices that proved instrumental in maintaining my mental health during this intensely stressful period. Socially, I made a conscious effort to build connections entirely separate from my previous circle. I joined entrepreneurial networking groups, attended tech meetups, and volunteered with a coding program for underprivileged youth. These new relationships were refreshingly uncomplicated by shared history with Allison and Jackson. After 6 months in my small apartment, I moved to a different part of the city, completely reinventing my living environment. My new space reflected the person I was becoming: minimalist, functional, forward-looking. I donated or sold most possessions that reminded me of my previous life, keeping only a few photographs of family and personal achievements. This physical decluttering mirrored the emotional clearing I was undertaking. 18 months after the divorce, my company Clarity Analytics began gaining serious traction. Our first enterprise client, a mid-sized retail chain, reported a 28% increase in targeted sales after implementing our predictive consumer behavior platform. This case study opened doors to larger clients, and within another 6 months, we were servicing 12 Fortune 500 companies. The influx of business necessitated rapid expansion. We moved from our modest office to an entire floor in a downtown Seattle high-rise. Our team grew from 5 to 20, then quickly to 50 employees. I was meticulous about company culture, ensuring every hire aligned with our core values of innovation, integrity, and genuine collaboration. The betrayal I had experienced made me particularly attuned to the importance of loyalty and transparency in all relationships, including professional ones. Our second round of funding came from a prominent venture capital firm, injecting $12 million into the company at a valuation that made me, on paper, at least a multimillionaire. Industry publications began featuring Clarity Analytics as a rising star in business intelligence software. I received invitations to speak at major tech conferences and was named to a 30 under 30 list of entrepreneurs to watch. Throughout this period of growth, I maintained zero contact with Allison or Jackson. I had blocked both their numbers and social media accounts, focusing entirely on moving forward without looking back. However, news occasionally reached me through mutual acquaintances who had remained in my life. According to these reports, Allison and Jackson had officially moved in together shortly after our divorce was finalized. They made a show of their relationship on social media, posting perfectly staged photos of exotic vacations and romantic dinners. To casual observers, they appeared blissfully happy. But those closer to them began noticing cracks in the facade. Jackson had left our former company 3 months after the affair became public. The official story was that he wanted to pursue other opportunities, but rumors suggested that management had pushed him out, uncomfortable with the situation he had created. He bounced between 3 different positions in 18 months, unable to find the right fit or maintain the career momentum he had previously enjoyed. Allison had attempted to start her own marketing consultancy, leveraging her executive experience. Initially, she secured a few significant clients but struggled to retain them. Former colleagues hinted that her reputation had suffered not necessarily because of the affair itself, but due to questions about her judgment and loyalty that it raised in professional circles. Their financial situation had apparently deteriorated significantly. They had taken out a second mortgage on what was once our home and downsized from 2 luxury vehicles to 1 more modest car. The lavish lifestyle they showcased online was increasingly funded by credit cards rather than sustainable income. I processed this information with surprising indifference. Their struggles brought me no satisfaction, as I had moved beyond needing their failure to validate my success. I was genuinely content with the new life I had built and the person I had become through adversity. The industry event where our paths finally crossed again was the annual Northwest Tech Innovation Summit. Clarity Analytics had been nominated for a Breakthrough Technology Award, and I was scheduled to participate in a panel discussion on the future of consumer data analytics. I knew there was a possibility of encountering former colleagues, but had not anticipated coming face-to-face with both Allison and Jackson. I spotted them across the convention center atrium during the networking reception. Jackson was speaking with a group of attendees, business cards in hand, while Allison stood slightly apart, scanning the room. When her eyes met mine, her expression shifted from casual observation to unmistakable shock. I maintained my composure, nodding politely before turning back to my conversation with a potential investor. Minutes later, they both approached my table. 3 years had passed since I had stood in the same room with them, yet the moment felt strangely anticlimactic. Jackson initiated the conversation with forced casualness, congratulating me on the nomination as though we were old friends who had simply lost touch. Allison remained mostly silent, her eyes taking in my transformed appearance, and the respect others at the event clearly showed me. I responded with polite but distant professionalism, introducing them to my colleagues without explaining our complicated history. The brief exchange was cordial on the surface, but charged with unspoken tension. They asked superficial questions about my company, while I inquired about their general well-being, without showing particular interest in the details. After a few minutes of uncomfortable small talk, I excused myself for another appointment, leaving them standing awkwardly among people celebrating my success. That brief encounter apparently triggered something in both of them. Within a week, Allison sent an email to my personal address, expressing how wonderful it was to see me thriving and suggesting we meet for coffee to catch up properly. Her message included thinly veiled references to how much she had been reflecting on our past and the mistakes she had made. Jackson took a different approach, reaching out through LinkedIn with a business proposition. He claimed to have developed a complementary service that could integrate perfectly with Clarity Analytics, and requested a meeting to discuss potential collaboration. His message made no mention of our personal history, presenting himself solely as a potential business partner with a mutually beneficial opportunity. Their true motives became transparent when I had my assistant research Jackson's supposed business venture. It existed mainly on paper with no actual clients or functioning product. Further inquiry through industry contacts revealed that they had been struggling significantly. Their relationship had reportedly become strained under financial pressure, with frequent public arguments and periods of separation. They had been following my rising success from afar, watching as I built something substantial from the ashes of what they had destroyed. Now they were attempting to find a way back into my life. Not from genuine remorse or desire to make amends, but because they recognized I had something they wanted access to. The irony was not lost on me. I carefully considered how to respond to their unexpected reappearance in my life. Revenge fantasies I might have harbored years earlier held no appeal anymore. I had no desire to humiliate them publicly or reject them harshly, but I also recognized the importance of maintaining clear boundaries. I replied to Allison with a brief, polite email declining her invitation for coffee. I acknowledged our shared history without dwelling on it, and wished her well in her future endeavors. The message was neither cold nor warm, simply matter of fact. I made it clear through my tone that while I harbored no ill will, I had no interest in rekindling any form of personal relationship. To Jackson, I sent an equally measured response, explaining that his proposed business venture did not align with our company's current strategic direction. I offered some general industry advice that might help him refine his concept, but made it clear I would not be investing time or resources in his project. Professional courtesy without personal investment. Their reactions revealed much about how little they had grown in the intervening years. Allison sent several increasingly emotional messages, eventually accusing me of being cruel by not giving her a chance to apologize in person. Jackson became passive-aggressive, suggesting I had become arrogant with success and forgotten the people who were there before my rise to prominence. I did not engage with these provocations, letting their messages go unanswered. A mutual friend later informed me that Allison and Jackson had separated shortly after these exchanges. Apparently, the stress of financial difficulties, combined with the realization that I would not be their safety net, had fractured whatever bond had formed through their affair. I felt no satisfaction at this news, only a sense of closure. Their relationship had come full circle, beginning and ending with betrayal and disappointment. Meanwhile, my own personal life had evolved in unexpected and positive ways. During a charity coding event I had organized for local schools, I met Sarah, a brilliant computer science professor with a passion for increasing diversity in tech. Our connection developed naturally over several months of collaboration on educational initiatives before evolving into a romantic relationship. What struck me most about being with Sarah was the fundamental sense of security and mutual respect. We built our relationship on transparency, shared values, and genuine admiration for each other's work. The contrast with my marriage to Allison could not have been more pronounced. Sarah and I were true partners, challenging each other intellectually while providing emotional support. Clarity Analytics continued its exponential growth, expanding internationally with offices in London, Singapore, and Toronto. We maintained our commitment to ethical data practices, becoming industry leaders in privacy protection alongside predictive analytics. The company culture I had carefully cultivated attracted top talent who shared our vision for technology that served humanity rather than exploiting it. Beyond business success, I discovered genuine fulfillment in giving back. We established a foundation that provided technology, education, and mentorship to underserved communities. I personally taught coding workshops for at-risk youth, finding unexpected joy in helping young people discover their potential. This aspect of my life brought a satisfaction that transcended material success. The greatest lesson from my journey was realizing that what initially seemed like the worst betrayal became the catalyst for my most authentic life. Had Allison remained faithful, I might have continued in a marriage that limited both of us. Had Jackson been a true friend, I might never have pushed myself beyond the comfortable boundaries of corporate employment. Their betrayal forced me to rebuild from scratch, allowing me to design a life aligned with my deepest values rather than external expectations. I also learned that forgiveness is not about excusing actions or reconciling with those who hurt you. True forgiveness happens internally, when you no longer need the other person to acknowledge their wrongdoing for you to heal. I had forgiven Allison and Jackson, not for their benefit but for my own freedom. Their actions no longer had power over my emotions or decisions. Most importantly, I discovered that the opposite of betrayal is not blind trust but honest connection. Building relationships on mutual respect, shared growth, and genuine transparency creates a foundation that opportunity or convenience cannot easily shake. The pain I experienced opened me to deeper, more meaningful connections in all areas of my life. So if you are facing betrayal or heartbreak right now, remember that your lowest moment can become the foundation of your greatest success. The people who walk away make room for those who truly belong in your story. The real victory is not in proving your worth to those who failed to see it, but in creating a life so authentic and fulfilling that their absence becomes a gift you eventually thank them for. Have you ever had a betrayal turn into a blessing in disguise? Share your experience in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the worst endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings.